Wait, what are you doing? You're not allowed in here.
She's pregnant.
No!
Why are they doing this?
The rain poured heavily, turning the street into thick mud. People rushed past, trying not to get wet, but no one stopped. Because in the middle of the chaos,
Please.
a pregnant woman was being dragged across the ground. Please, stop. I didn't do anything. Her voice trembled. Her dress was soaked, covered in mud, her hands shaking as she tried to protect her stomach. But the security guard didn't care. You think you can walk into this place looking like that? He snapped. This is a high-class hotel. Get out. He shoved her harder. She fell into the mud again. Gasps came from the small crowd forming nearby. Some people whispered, some recorded, but no one stepped forward. Because to them, she was just another poor woman causing trouble. They didn't see her worth. They didn't know her story. And most importantly, they didn't know who she belonged to. The woman slowly lifted her face. Mud streaked across her cheeks. But her eyes, they weren't weak. They weren't broken. They were calm. Dangerously calm. I told you, she said softly, almost like a warning. You're making a mistake. The guard laughed. A mistake? Look at you. He grabbed her arm again, and that's when it happened. A black luxury car suddenly stopped in front of the hotel. The doors opened. Men in dark suits stepped out, silent, cold, dangerous.
You just made a mistake.
The crowd froze. Even the guard paused. Then he stepped out, a young Korean man, tall, extremely handsome, sharp jawline, cold eyes, a dragon tattoo visible along his neck. The air changed instantly, heavy, terrifying. The man didn't say anything at first. His eyes moved from the guard to the woman in the mud, and in that moment, everything stopped. Let her go. His voice was low, calm, but deadly. The guard scoffed nervously. Sir, she was causing trouble. I said, his eyes darkened. Let her go. The grip on her arm loosened immediately. The guard stepped back, confused, uneasy. The man walked forward slowly, each step echoing like a warning. The crowd parted instantly. No one dared stand in his way. He reached her. Then something unexpected happened. He knelt, right there in the mud, in front of everyone. Gasps spread through the crowd, carefully, gently. He wiped the mud from her face. His expression softened. My wife, he said quietly. I told you not to walk alone. The world went silent. The guard's face went pale. Wife? He stuttered. The man looked up, and this time, there was no warmth left. Only danger. Do you have any idea who you just touched? The guard's legs weakened. The crowd stepped back. Phones lowered. Fear replaced curiosity. The man stood up slowly, his aura overwhelming. You didn't just drag a woman into the mud, he said coldly. You dragged my child with her. Silence. Dead silence. Then he gave a small nod. And just like that, the men behind him moved. Fast, precise, merciless. The guard didn't even have time to react. The crowd scattered. Screams filled the air. But the man didn't look back. He bent down again, lifting his wife carefully into his arms, like she was the only thing that mattered. Let's go home, he whispered. She looked at him, and for the first time, she smiled, soft, knowing. It was because she knew the storm had just begun. The rain didn't stop that night. It got worse, just like the fear inside the hotel, because what happened outside was only the beginning. Inside, the manager paced nervously. What do you mean they took him? He snapped. The staff stood silent. No one dared speak, because everyone saw it. The moment that man arrived, everything changed. That wasn't just anyone, one worker whispered. That was him. The manager froze. Who? But deep down, he already knew. Meanwhile, inside the moving car, silence filled the air. The pregnant woman sat beside him, wrapped in his coat, her body still slightly shaking, not from fear, but from something else. "You shouldn't have come alone," the man said quietly, eyes fixed ahead. She looked at him. I didn't think they would go that far." His jaw tightened. "They always do." The car stopped. A massive gate opened slowly, revealing a dark, luxurious mansion, guards everywhere, watching, waiting. The moment she stepped out, every single one of them lowered their heads. "Madam." Respect. Deep, fearful respect. The hotel guard's face flashed in her mind, and for a second, she closed her eyes. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. She nodded, but then she said something unexpected. "Don't kill him." He turned, surprised. "He dragged you through the mud. And he didn't know who I was." Silence. Her voice remained calm. "But now he does." A small pause, then she added, "That's enough." The man studied her face, then slowly. He smiled. Not soft, not kind, dangerous. You've always been too merciful." "And you've never been enough," she replied instantly. That made him chuckle, but his eyes still cold. "All right," he said, "I won't kill him." Relief flickered in her eyes, but it didn't last. "However," he continued, "they all need to learn." Her expression changed slightly. "You're not going back there," she said, but he was already walking away, and that's when she knew. It was too late. Back at the hotel, no one was working anymore. Phones kept ringing, but nobody answered, because outside, black cars had started arriving, one by one. The manager's hands trembled. "No! No, no, no!" The doors opened. Men stepped in, silent, well-dressed, terrifying. Then, he walked in again. The same man, the same presence. But this time, there was no calm, only judgment. The entire lobby froze. The manager rushed forward. "Sir, please, this was a misunderstanding." A single look from him, and the manager stopped talking. Completely. "You run this place?" he asked quietly. The manager nodded nervously. Yes, sir." "Good." A pause. Then you'll understand what happens when your staff disrespects my family." The word hit harder than anything else. Family. The manager's legs almost gave out. I didn't know." "Exactly." The man stepped closer. "And that's the problem." Behind him, his men spread out, blocking exits. Before we continue with this story, would love you to hit the subscribe button below to subscribe to this channel for more interesting stories like this. Controlling the room, the same people who watched earlier, now couldn't even breathe. "You saw it happen," he said, looking around, "and none of you stopped it." Silence. Pure silence. Then he gave a small nod, and suddenly, everything erupted. Tables flipped, glass shattered, people screamed, chaos, controlled chaos, not random, not messy, calculated, every second of fear, delivered perfectly. The manager dropped to his knees. Please, I'll fix it, The man crouched in front of him, calm again, too calm. "Fix it?" he repeated, then leaned closer. "You can't fix disrespect." He stood up, turned away, and walked toward the exit. But before leaving, he stopped. Without turning back, he said, "By morning, this place won't exist." Outside, the rain continued. Inside the car, she was waiting. The moment he entered, she looked at him. "You did it anyway." He didn't answer, just stared ahead. Then finally, "They won't touch you again." She sighed softly. "That's not what I wanted." A pause. Then she looked at him differently. "You're going too far." His expression didn't change. "I haven't gone far enough." Silence filled the car again, but this time, it felt heavier, because something had changed, not outside, but between them, and far away. Someone was watching everything unfold on a screen. A slow smile appeared. "So," the voice said quietly, "the king has moved. A shadow shifted. Good. Now we can begin." The city didn't sleep that night. It couldn't, because something had shifted. Power, control, fear. and everyone could feel it. Inside a dark room lit only by screens, a man sat watching every movement, every decision, every mistake. The footage replayed again, the hotel, the chaos, the destruction. Then it paused. Right on his face, the Korean mafia boss. The man leaned back slowly. Interesting. His voice was calm, but dangerous. He's more emotional than I expected. Another figure stepped forward from the shadows. Should we move now? A pause, then a faint smile. No. Let him burn the city a little more. He leaned forward again. I want to see how far he'll go. For her. Meanwhile, at the mansion, silence filled the room. The pregnant woman stood near the window, staring out into the rain. Her reflection looked calm, but her eyes, they were thinking, calculating. He walked in behind her, quiet. You're awake, he said. I didn't sleep. I figured. A pause, then she turned to him. You're being watched. That made him stop. By who? I don't know yet, but I can feel it. Silence. His eyes narrowed slightly. Good, she frowned. That's not something to be good about, but he stepped closer, now standing right in front of her. Let them watch. His voice dropped. Let them see what happens when they target my family. For a moment, neither of them spoke, because they both understood something now. This wasn't just revenge anymore. This was war. The next morning, the city exploded with news. Luxury hotel destroyed overnight. Unknown group takes control. Rumors of underground power shift, people whispered. Names were mentioned, quietly, carefully, because saying the wrong thing could be your last. But then, something unexpected happened. A convoy of black vehicles moved through the city. Not his men. Different, organized, silent, and heading in one direction, his territory. Inside the mansion, one of his men rushed in. Boss, we have movement. He didn't turn. Who? We don't know yet, but they're not hiding. That was enough. He stood up slowly, adjusting his suit, the dragon tattoo along his neck slightly visible. Good. His tone was calm, too calm. I was getting bored. Outside, the convoy stopped. Doors opened. Men stepped out, all dressed in black, all disciplined, all armed. And then he appeared, the man from the screen, tall, composed, smiling, but not friendly. He looked up at the mansion. Beautiful, he muttered, then added quietly, I think I'll take it. Inside, she felt it, that shift again, stronger this time. They're here, she said. He looked at her, not surprised. Stay inside. I'm not hiding. You're not fighting either. Their eyes locked, our tension rising. You don't control me, she said. And you don't understand what's coming, he replied. Silence then. Gunshots, loud, sharp, close. Everything changed instantly. Outside, chaos erupted, bullets tearing through the air, men dropping, shouts, commands. The war had started. He stepped out, right into it, calm, focused, dangerous. His presence alone shifted the battlefield. The opposing man saw him and smiled wider. So, he said loudly over the chaos, you're the one causing all this noise. No response, just a stare, cold, unshaken. Then, something unexpected happened. She stepped outside, right into the middle of the war. Stop! Her voice cut through everything. For a split second, even the gunfire slowed. Both men looked at her. And in that moment, the atmosphere changed, completely. The enemy's smile faded slightly. Ah, he said softly. So that's her. His eyes darkened, now filled with interest. Everything makes sense now. The Korean mafia boss moved instantly, standing in front of her, protecting her. You shouldn't be here, he said low. But she didn't move, didn't step back. Instead, she looked at the enemy, directly, fearless. Who are you? She asked. The man chuckled, then took a step forward. My name. He paused, eyes locked onto hers. is the reason your life is about to change. Silence. Heavy. Dangerous. Then, he added one last thing. That child you're carrying, the mafia boss froze, belongs to a world far bigger than you understand. Everything stopped. Even the rain felt louder. The rain didn't stop. It never does when something big is about to be revealed. Silence filled the battlefield. No one moved. No one spoke because of one sentence. That child you're carrying. The Korean mafia boss's eyes darkened instantly. Dangerous. Cold. Finish that sentence, he said slowly. The man smiled, calm, unbothered. Oh, so you don't know. That was enough. The air changed. His men tightened their grip on their weapons, but the woman, she didn't react. Not like before, not scared, not confused, just quiet, watching, thinking. Who are you? The mafia boss asked again. This time, not calm, not patient, but controlled anger. The man stepped closer, ignoring everyone else, focusing only on her. You really don't remember, he said softly. Her eyes flickered, just for a second. On too fast for anyone else to notice, but not for him. He saw it, and smiled wider. That's interesting. He leaned in slightly, because I remember everything. The mafia boss moved instantly, grabbing him by the collar, pulling him close. You talk too much. But the man didn't resist, didn't even flinch. Instead, he looked past him, at her, and said one word, a name no one else had ever heard. Her body froze, completely. The mafia boss noticed immediately. His grip loosened slightly. What did you just say? But she stepped forward, slowly, calmly, too calmly. Say it again. Her voice was different, lower, colder, not the same woman from the mud. The man smiled. He knew. He had found it. That's more like it, he whispered, then said the name again. And this time, something broke. Memories, flashes, voices, blood, fire, running, screaming, a child crying. She closed her eyes, tightly, as if trying to hold something back. But it was too late. The mafia boss stepped toward her, concern in his eyes. Hey, look at me. But when she opened her eyes, he stopped. Completely. Those weren't the same eyes. They were sharper, colder, older, like someone who had seen too much. I told you, the man said quietly. She's not who you think she is. Silence. Heavy, unavoidable. The mafia boss looked at her, searching, trying to understand. Talk to me, but she didn't answer, not immediately. Instead, she looked at the man and asked one question. Why now? The man laughed softly. Because you've been hiding long enough. A pause. And then, princess. The word hit harder than anything else. The mafia boss's expression changed instantly. Confusion, shock, then anger. What is he talking about? He demanded. But she still didn't look at him, not yet. Tell him, the man continued. Tell him who you really are. A long silence. Then, finally, she turned and looked at him. I wasn't supposed to survive. Her voice was calm, controlled, but heavy. Years ago, my family was destroyed. Not by chance, not by war, but by people, like you. His eyes narrowed. What do you mean, like me? She stepped closer, now standing right in front of him. No, not you. A pause. Then, your world. Everything went quiet again. I was born into something bigger than this city, she continued. Bigger than your empire. Bigger than everything you think you control. The man behind them smiled, satisfied. And when they came for us, her voice dropped. They didn't just kill my family. They erased us. The mafia boss stared at her, trying to piece everything together. You're saying, but he couldn't finish. I ran, she said. I hid. I became no one. A small, bitter smile. A waitress. Silence. But you, she looked at him differently now, softer. Weren't part of that plan. That hit differently. So everything was real? He asked quietly. Her eyes softened. Everything with you was real. But before anything else could be said, the man clapped slowly, mocking. Beautiful, he said, truly. Then his expression changed, cold, serious. But stories like that, he stepped forward, don't get happy endings. His men raised their weapons again. This time, he said, we finish what we started. The mafia boss stepped in front of her instantly, protective as unshaken. But now, everything was different, because this wasn't just his war anymore. This was hers, and she wasn't running anymore. The rain finally stopped, but the war had only just reached its end. Gunfire echoed through the night, loud, relentless, but this time, it wasn't chaos, it was control. She stood still, right in the middle of it all. No fear, no hesitation. The Korean mafia boss fought like a man with nothing left to lose. Every move sharp, every strike final. Anyone who stepped forward didn't get back up. But her eyes, they weren't on the fight, they were on him. The man from the shadows, the one who knew her name. You should have stayed hidden, he said calmly. Then I would have let you live. She stepped forward slowly, her presence alone, shifting the air. I didn't survive to keep running. A small smile crossed his face. That's what your father said too. That was it. The last piece. Her eyes darkened, not with anger, with certainty. You killed him. Silence, then, he shrugged. Someone had to end that bloodline. The words hung in the air, heavy, final. The mafia boss stopped fighting, just for a second, and looked at her. But she didn't look back. Not this time. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was something deeper. Then it ends tonight, she said. The man laughed softly. You think you can kill me? She didn't answer. She moved. Faster than anyone expected. Closer, calmer, controlled. Before his men could react. She was already in front of him. The mafia boss's eyes widened slightly. Not in fear. In realization, she had never been weak. She had just been waiting. A single shot rang out. Silence followed. The man looked down slowly, at the blood spreading across his chest, then back at her, surprised. You remembered everything. She stepped closer, her voice calm, final. I remembered enough. He smiled faintly, then collapsed. And just like that, the war ended. The remaining men dropped their weapons, no orders, no fight left, because they understood something now. She wasn't just a survivor. She was the end. The Korean mafia boss walked toward her slowly, the chaos fading behind him. When he reached her, he didn't speak immediately. He just looked at her, really looked at her, not the waitress, not the victim, but the woman she truly was. You were going to tell me? He asked quietly. She met his eyes. I was going to, when it was safe. A small pause. It was never safe, he replied. Silence. But not heavy this time. Different. Real. Then he stepped closer, gently placing his hand over hers. And now? She looked down briefly, then back at him. Now you know who I am. A faint smile touched his lips. I knew who you were the moment you chose to stay. That surprised her. For the first time, she didn't have an answer. The tension between them softened, not gone, but changed. Behind them, the sky began to clear. The storm was over. Days later. The city was quiet again. Rumors spread, whispers of what happened. But no one spoke too loudly, because power had shifted. And this time, it didn't belong to just one person. It belonged to both of them, inside the mansion. She stood by the window once again, but this time, she wasn't alone. His arms wrapped around her gently, careful, protective. No more running, he said softly. She placed her hand over his. No more hiding. A pause, then a small smile. Just us, he nodded. Just us. Outside, the city lights glowed, calm, peaceful. But underneath it all, power remained, and this time, it had a new queen. The rain had finally stopped falling over the city, but it didn't feel like peace. It felt like the world was holding its breath after something irreversible. The streets were silent, too silent. No engines, no voices, no movement. Only the sound of dripping water falling from broken signs and shattered glass. The battlefield that once carried chaos now looked like a frozen memory of destruction. Burned-out cars stood like hollow shells. Smoke rose slowly into the sky, twisting like ghosts refusing to leave. The ground was covered in debris, mud, and silence. And in the middle of it all, she stood. Annabelle. She wasn't shaking. She wasn't crying. She wasn't reacting the way someone was expected to react after a war. She stood still, like she had already seen this ending long before it happened. Her dress was torn slightly at the edges, mud-stained parts of her skin, strands of her long hair stuck to her face. But her eyes were different. They weren't the eyes of a waitress anymore. They weren't the eyes of a woman dragged through humiliation. They were the eyes of someone who had finally remembered everything she had lost. Across from her stood the man, the one who started it all, the one who believed he controlled everything. He looked at her calmly, brushing dust off his sleeve like the destruction around him meant nothing. "You survived longer than expected," he said. His voice was smooth, controlled, almost polite. Annabelle didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked at him for a long moment. Then she said softly, "I didn't survive." A pause. I was left unfinished. The wind moved between them. The silence deepened. The man smiled faintly. "Same thing," he said. Behind her, footsteps echoed slowly. The Korean mafia boss stepped forward. But he was no longer the same man who entered this war. His suit was torn, his body marked with battle, his dragon tattoo visible across his neck and hands, dark and defined under the broken light. But his presence was still dangerous, still controlled, still dominant. He walked until he stood beside her, not behind her, not in front of her, beside her, like a mirror of power. He didn't look at her when he spoke. "Stop talking," he said coldly. The man opposite them laughed quietly. "You still don't understand what she is." The mafia boss finally turned his eyes toward him. "And you still don't understand what happens when you touch what belongs to me." A pause. The air tightened. Then Annabelle stepped forward. Slow, controlled, each step deliberate. "You destroyed my family," she said. Her voice didn't shake. It didn't rise. It carried something heavier than anger. Truth. The man nodded. "They were in the way." A simple answer, like it meant nothing. Annabelle tilted her head slightly. "You didn't destroy weakness," she said. "You destroyed balance." For the first time, the man's smile faded. Just slightly. But enough. Behind them, his men shifted. Weapons tightened in their grip, waiting for the order. But the mafia boss raised his hand, and they stopped, instantly, because when he moved, people listened. Annabelle took another step forward, the distance between her and the man now almost gone. "This ends now," she said, and for the first time, the atmosphere broke. Gunfire exploded through the silence. The world turned violent again. Men rushed forward, weapons raised. What orders shouted into chaos. The battlefield came alive again. But this time, it was different. Controlled chaos, not random destruction, but execution. The mafia boss moved first, fast, precise. Every step forward ended in silence behind him. One man tried to strike him. Gone. Another raised a weapon, already too late. His movements were not rushed. They were calculated, like he had already seen every outcome before it happened. But even in the middle of war, his eyes never left her. Because she was moving too. Annabelle walked through the chaos, not running, not hiding, not reacting, walking, as if the battlefield itself had agreed not to touch her. Bullets passed her by. Men fell before reaching her. Explosions lit the background behind her silhouette, but she did not stop. She was going somewhere. No. The man in front of them finally frowned. "You think this changes anything?" he shouted over the chaos. Annabelle didn't slow down. "I don't think," she said. "I remember." She reached him, now standing only a few steps away. The war around them felt distant, muted, like it was happening in another world. The man studied her closely, then smiled again. "So you remember?" "I remember enough," she replied. "You should have stayed hidden," he said. "And let you erase me completely," she answered softly. Silence. Then she moved. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was precise. One motion, one final decision. Everything stopped. The man froze. His expression changed slightly. Confusion, then realization, then pain. He looked down slowly, blood spreading across his chest, then back at her. "You became her," he whispered. Annabelle stepped closer. "No," she said. "I became what you couldn't erase." The man exhaled slowly, almost peacefully. Then his legs gave out, and he fell. Silence returned again, but this time it stayed. No more gunfire, no more shouting, no more war, just emptiness. The remaining men dropped their weapons, not because they were ordered to, but because they understood. There was nothing left to fight for. The mafia boss walked toward her slowly, each step steady, controlled. When he reached her, he didn't speak immediately. He just looked at her, not as someone fragile, not as someone to protect, but as someone who had survived something even he couldn't control. "You were never weak," he said quietly. Annabelle met his eyes. "I just wasn't ready to be strong." A pause. "And now?" he asked. She looked at the broken city around them, at everything that had ended, then back at him. "Now. I'm done running." Something shifted in his expression, not surprise, not shock, understanding. He stepped closer, carefully, then wrapped his arms around her, not tightly, not possessively, but gently, like a choice. "No more running," he said. She placed her hand over his. "No more hiding." A pause, then, "Just living," she whispered. He nodded. "Just us." The wind moved softly through the ruined city. The storm was gone. But something stronger remained behind. Not destruction, not fear, but balance. Power had shifted. Silence had replaced chaos. And the world, whether it understood it or not, had changed forever. Inside the mansion days later, the atmosphere was different. No tension, no danger, just stillness. She stood by the window again, looking at the city that once tried to erase her. But this time, she wasn't alone. He stood behind her, his arms gently around her waist, protective, not because she needed protection, but because he chose to stay. "No more running," he said softly. She placed her hand over his. "No more hiding." A quiet silence followed. Then she smiled faintly. "Just living." He nodded. "Just us." Outside, the city lights glowed softly. Life continued, but not the same way as before, because something had changed beneath it all. Power was no longer chaos. It was balance. And this time, it had a queen. They tried to erase her. The silence after the war didn't feel like peace. It felt like something was still coming. The city had stopped breathing. No noise. No movement, no life. Only the sound of dripping water and broken silence. Annabelle stood by the window of the mansion, staring at the city lights below. Her hand rested on her stomach. A life inside her. A life that had already survived too much. Behind her, the mafia boss entered quietly. No guards, no noise, just him. He stopped a few steps behind her. "You're thinking again," he said softly. Annabelle didn't turn. "I always think," she replied. "That's how I stayed alive." He walked closer. "You don't need to survive anymore." She finally turned to him. "But peace doesn't last for people like us." A silence followed. Then his phone rang. He picked it up. His expression changed. "Someone is still alive," he said. Annabelle's eyes sharpened. "That's impossible," she said. He looked at her. "They know about the child." Everything went still. Annabelle stepped forward slowly. "Who?" she asked. He paused. "The one we thought was the end." A memory passed between them. The final war. The last man falling. But endings are not always real. Somewhere far away, a hidden facility lit up. Screens turned on. A man who was supposed to be dead opened his eyes. "Bring her to me," he said calmly. "She doesn't understand yet. Her child is not just hers." Back at the mansion, Annabelle suddenly froze. "I saw something," she whispered. "What?" the mafia boss asked. "A place underground. People watching me when I was younger." His expression darkened. "That doesn't exist anymore." Annabelle shook her head slowly. "It never stopped existing." That night, neither of them slept. Shadows moved outside the mansion, watching, waiting. The next morning, every screen in the city turned on by itself. A man appeared, calm, smiling. "I think it's time we reintroduced ourselves," he said. Annabelle froze when she saw him. The mafia boss noticed. "You know him," he said. She didn't answer immediately. Then she whispered, "He was never gone." The man on the screen smiled. "Annabelle, you ran for a long time." She stepped closer to the screen. "I didn't run. I survived." He laughed softly. "Survival is not enough anymore." Then his voice changed. "It's time to finish what your family started." Silence filled the room. The mafia boss looked at her. "What did your family start?" Annabelle hesitated, then said, "A system you were never supposed to know existed." The city outside began to shift. Old powers waking up, hidden forces moving again. Annabelle stood by the window. "I thought it was over," she whispered. "It was never over," he replied. "Tell me everything," he said. And she did. Piece by piece, memory by memory, truth by truth, about her childhood, about the hidden organization, about the destruction of her family, about the child she carries, not just life, but legacy. The mafia boss listened silently, then said,
You
"So
just
this was
made a
never about
mistake.
us." Annabelle nodded. "It was about what comes after us." Outside, the city lights flickered. Something was waking up again. Something older, something deeper, something worse. Annabelle placed her hand on her stomach. "He's not just coming for me," she said. The mafia boss stepped closer. "He's coming for everything." A long silence followed. Then he said, "Then we stop him." Annabelle looked at him, and for the first time she smiled faintly. "No," she said. "We end him." They stood together, not as survivors, not as victims, but as something far more dangerous, a beginning no one saw coming, and somewhere far away. The real war was just about to start. For more videos like this, kindly like and subscribe to this channel. Thanks so much for listening to my story. See you on the next bye.